Hello. This video is recorded over several days in several places, so expect a lot of lighting changes and costume changes. So what is this video? For me, college was never a guarantee. Not because of my grades or acceptance or anything, but I didn't think I would make it past high school at all. After everything that I had been going through, you know, the insomnia, the emotional numbness, the buzzing bones, suicidal ideation, all of the eating stuff for so long, I never considered that there could be a life beyond that, that I could survive that long, that I could have a future at all. So everything around me, where I am, what I did, who I talked to, all of that could have just never happened. So that's what this video is. Everything that I've experienced in the last 4 years, positive or negative, that I am privileged to experience in a place that I love. The first new experience that I could have just never had at all happened really early. It was the first day I came here before I even started school at orientation when I fell in love. Which is a crazy thing to happen in one day, especially considering it was with a woman and I had never considered women before that day. I just saw this girl and I was intrigued. I didn't know what I was feeling. I figured it out really fast, but I talked to her and I figured, oh, I just want to be like super besties. That's it, right? Super besties. In my wisdom of not thinking I was gay, thought, yes, because I want to be friends with her, great idea is, well, I need a roommate and she needs a roommate, so let's just be roommates together. She said yes. I got her contact information, and then later that night I was like, oh, obviously I'm not with Emily. I have never been with Emily. Actually, being with Emily was never an option because, well, we live together. Also, the main reason actually was I was severely unwell and I could not focus on anybody other than myself. I had to put all of my resources, all of my attention into keeping myself together, keeping myself healthy as much as possible. But she was still very important to me. So I'm going to talk about her a lot in this video because even though I could never be with her, she was the first person that I was ever in love with, right? She was the first time I realized that I could be in love with someone at all. This is Balsam. This is where I lived for the first year. Unfortunately, I can't get into this building because it is now summertime. I have taken too long to record this. I didn't really mind not being in a relationship with Emily at this point because we still lived together. So we spent most of our time together and we got along pretty fast. The first night before classes, we just stayed up all night talking about high school and our lives and who we are and got to know each other. We went out for walks and we watched movies, and whenever we watched movies, we would each have our own role to prepare the dorm room to be more comfortable. So like she would grab the pillows from her bed, I would turn out the lights and turn on like the little fairy light things, and we would just sit under my bed, which was lofted, and just watch movies. But even when we weren't going out or we weren't doing anything in particular together, it was still nice to just be around her, to be around this person that I really, really like. So even if we were doing our own thing and she was playing games or I was doing puzzles or drawing like Inktober or all of my memorized puzzles because I did them so frequently, we were still together in that way. So a lot of what I remember from living here is good with Emily, right? Being in love is a good feeling, but it wasn't always great. I still wasn't well, I still wasn't stable. A lot of how I felt from high school still carried over, which I knew would happen. I didn't expect like snap, be cured or whatever. But there was a lot of stuff that I was still dealing with. So even my 18th birthday, a week into when classes started, it had been a very stressful week. My first week away from home, doing my own thing. So my 18th birthday, I spent under my bed just having a panic attack, but for like 15 hours. It was all day, it was all night, and that's just part of what I remember from that room. That's how a lot of this video is gonna go. There's some positive, there's some negative. 'Cause to be honest, I was sick for a lot of the time here. I wanted to die in that room. Freshman year, that transition was rough, but every day that I was here was a day that I could have just never had, so I still made it a point to appreciate all of that. So in this dorm, Emily and I are both gay. I was newly gay and didn't really understand it, but it was really cool to have a place for that identity that I was trying to still figure out. So one thing that we did was we put signs on the door. I think the first one was like, what's on the gay agenda or something, and put out sticky notes so people would be able to add their take onto it. And then after that, I just added a bunch of flags, and people could request a flag to put on there. So it was pretty cool, but I wasn't out yet. So I don't think she was out yet either. So in case one of our families came over or FaceTimed or something, we had a code word to take all the stuff down off of the door and put away all the gay stuff, and that was to take out the kitchen trash, because we don't have a kitchen because it was a dorm room. So sneaky, so smart. There are still a couple of things that I do want to show you. My first semester, I had very strict rules for how I wanted to get better, which I had done before, and one of those was reading every day and going outside every day and things like that. So I opted to come out here to that tree area and just lay out in the shade early in the semester, so it was still summer, like barely fall, and just read books. The second place of note is up there, the 3rd story balcony with the cool rocking chairs. That was where I told Emily that I was unwell. That's also where I could go out and write every day and look over the campus and see what people were doing. The reason why I value it the most is because when I couldn't sleep, which was frequently, I didn't always want to come outside because that was like dangerous and stuff to be outside in the middle of the night by myself. So if it wasn't too severe, I would just come out on the balcony and sit out at night and probably write poetry in my pajamas. So good. But I would look over the campus again, but it was so different because it was dark, the lights were on, nobody was out, and sometimes if it had rained, there would be the puddles reflecting the lights with the bugs and the cool breeze. Ugh. Definitely better than rolling around in my bed all night, being frustrated from not being able to sleep. But I value that place. It's also worth noting, part of the reason why I chose to come to this school specifically was because there was a program for people with disabilities to come to school here, like if they just needed some social support, or some reading support, or just a support in class, whatever it was, it just gave them a little bit of a boost so that they could actually go to college. And since most of my friends in high school had disabilities and that culture was a big part of my life, I didn't really want to just jump right over to not having that in my life, and just being in a place that is accessible and intentional about being accessible for all kinds of people was important to me. So starting my freshman year, I volunteered with that group to be that support that they needed. So like for one of the students, I sat in with one of their online classes, or like I would go to meals or help with homework or something like that, and I could just sign up for shifts. And that was a lot of my social outlet in college, honestly, was just interacting with that group. Those were my friends. Most of my Friday nights were just doing whatever weekend warrior activities they were doing that week. But that was a big part of my social life in the first couple years of college. Over the course of the semester, especially at the beginning, Emily and I went on walks just around campus and found different places all over the place. Although she found most of them just going on her way because she went for walks all the time, and she would come back and tell me about them. She showed me an area just somewhere on campus or somewhere around campus that was an old abandoned building falling apart that just had mannequins. I think I found it. Yeah, we came over here and there were like mannequin heads on the railing and just the door completely destroyed. So this is Bardo. This is the performance hall, fine art museum, and it's a place for classes. Just at night we would come down here and she would skateboard around, but I would sit over here just against one of these pillars and just draw. I think that might have been in October during Inktober, but I would sit here and draw. Or I would write or do whatever. She would just skate around and we would listen to music. We had just a history of art, I think, or just a general art class. I was not originally signed up for that class, but after the first week of being here and living with Emily, I actually changed my class schedule to have the art class here because she had it too. I guess that's what people do when they're in love or whatever. It looks like I can't get here. That was one of the first places that Emily showed me after just going on a stroll looking around campus. She was so excited to tell me about it because it was this beautiful, beautiful place. So we went all the way up the hill and then we got to a staircase, a stone staircase. And you stand at the top of the staircase, you look down and it is just this valley of bright green grass, the light shining down in between the trees, just kind of spotting the area. Just absolutely beautiful. There's a bridge just there, no water or anything, just a bridge in the grass. So we went and we just laid in the grass for a while. And, okay, I may have seen it with a bit of rose-colored glasses the first time, because really it is just an area of grass in a place full of mountains. But it is a good, quiet place to go when nobody really knows about it. We also found this purple chair that's just in the middle of campus, so not really hidden. It's dark, so you can barely see me, but you can see me enough. A lot of the experiences that I had over in this weird purple chair were at night. This was where we watched the Unis Honest finale, which was 12 hours long. But it was in November, so it was really cold, so we brought like lots of layers and lots of blankets and a bunch of snacks. We did eventually get like really cold though, so we went inside. There was a day that Emily and I came here where we were just hanging out. I don't know what we were talking about, but eventually she was pointing up and showing me all the constellations. You can't see them, I'm sorry. So she would show me certain constellations, but I wouldn't be able to find them because I don't know what I'm looking at. They're just dots in the sky. So eventually what she does is she like leans in and rests her head against mine and puts her hand in the air. It's like, can you see it now? And I did not know how to respond to that. My heart was feeling some things. It was a very gay day for me, but it was just another example of how I could feel towards someone, how I could feel that level of love, that level of positivity toward a person, toward a moment, toward an experience, that it was possible for the future too. One day Emily and I came out here and we were just laying on the chair like that, just side by side, and we were talking about high school. This was really early into the semester, so we were still trying to like learn about each other and whatever. But we were talking about high school and about previous people we were interested in, and because both of us are bi. I was probably making up a story about some woman that I fell in love with, or basically telling her exactly what happened, but pretending like it was someone else. Because, you know, the real person was right next to me and didn't know that was true. Yikes. But we did learn a lot about each other, and one of the things that I learned about her was that she was in love with this guy for all of high school. They never dated, But as we were laying here, as I was thinking about, oh, isn't it so nice that I could feel this way about a woman? So interesting. She tells me that she thinks she's still in love with him. Ugh, my heart broke, but in a good way. I wasn't sad about it. I wasn't like upset, and it wasn't a lost opportunity because like we couldn't be together anyway. I already said that, but I don't know. It was just heartbreak, which was an experience that I wanted to have. Weirdly enough, it was an experience that was important in people's lives, and I wanted to be a part of that. So in this way, where nothing really changed because of it, I could feel that disappointment maybe, that I feel so strongly about someone and they don't feel that way back. But I'm still glad that I had the time that I had with her, and that we could go out to places like this. But I still had my own places around campus too. Well, this is a pretty area. I used to count how many flights of stairs I did, and for freshman year I would go up like 10 flights a day. And during the time that I was on campus, I think I got 1,500 flights, and that was not including the many months that we went home. This over here is a dirt path right next to the actual sidewalk that's here just because so many people would be lazy and not walk all the way to the sidewalk and would just trample the grass over here until they put up a trailhead that said that it was 0.1 miles long. Well, this is the library. Not much has changed around here. This is just a little reading nook. I saw this during the tour. There are games here. What? But yeah, it's just a little reading area for fiction. What? It's me. I'm on a bookshelf like I always wanted. I like these ones. They're just booths that you can spread out in as chargers, as lighting, as everything. I wrote one of my first semester research papers here. That was the internalized heterosexism one. And I had all of my cutout pieces of the sections of the paper, and I would work on it out here and just spread everything out, move all the pieces around. It was nice. I also drew this area. There's a puzzle. I didn't know they had puzzles here. But the first day that we toured here, there was a table with a puzzle out, I think somewhere downstairs, and I just have not found it since then. But my therapy office also has puzzles. There's another one. That's epic. But yeah, so my therapy office also has puzzles, so I get there early all the time. I did a lot of work over here. I did a lot of classes. And I used to watch the Honest videos over here. They would post them at 3 o'clock. I would usually be here at 3 o'clock, and it would be a nice break from my work, a nice time to laugh, just have fun. Although another thing that happened over here was that is where I learned that the Supreme Court, a lot of the people in the Supreme Court kind of regretted gay marriage and stuff, and I was very upset by that. Not a great time, especially considering on the way home I got called a slur. So, oh well. For the most part, just nice memories here. Just chilling, doing what I gotta do to pass my classes. Did I pass my classes at this point? I think I did. Okay. Even though I was finding all these places around campus and I was making my own space, like at the library, something just didn't feel right. Like college just wasn't a good fit for me. I was still sick. I was having panic attacks in classes. I warned one of my professors at the very beginning of the semester that that was a possibility because I knew that I wasn't well. My bones were just always buzzing, no matter what I was doing. I would walk home from class and I would dig my nails into my palms or keys or pens or anything that I could. None of them left a mark, so I wrote it off as I don't know what I called it, but I didn't consider it what it was, which was self-harm. But I would do that all the time. But one day, I was walking home from class, walking home from Forsyth, and I just saw the leaves. It was fall, and the leaves were mostly yellow, a lot brighter than typical. And someone had just mowed the lawn, so it smelled like that. I just heard people's footsteps. I heard my own breathing. And I experienced the world. I felt the sensations around me, which is not saying much. That is not a big thing. I had just been so disconnected from the beauty of the world that I finally saw yellow leaves and I just smiled. But it stood out to me as, wow, nothing has to happen for me to feel good. Out here was one of the places where I would go just every day. It's probably the most common place that I do go. There's always drummers going on, there's always skateboarders, there's always people around, smells of food, the sound of the fountain, the mountains in the background. There's so much going on, and I could just sit and be a part of it. I didn't have to really be doing a whole bunch of stuff. I couldn't get internet out here, so I would just be reading or poetry or drawing, anything at all. And one of my fondest memories, it wasn't a beautiful day like this. There wasn't this breeze. It wasn't sunny and warm. It was raining and cold. But I just remembered what it felt like to want to write. I was walking home from class and I saw the risers, what I'm sitting on now, and I just, in the rain, in the cold, I just ran to one of those risers so I could sit down, so I could write, so that the ink could bleed on the page, so I could barely read it, but it didn't matter because I just needed to write. Because that's what I do. It isn't complicated. Nothing has to happen. I can just write and be a part of this environment. There were a lot of nights where I couldn't sleep, so my first step would be to go to the balcony and just hang out for a bit and look over campus. But if that didn't work, or it's been particularly long since I haven't slept, I would go out for little walks, just to the fountain. So my mother did not like that I was coming out here in the middle of the night when I was really unwell. She was saying like, oh, but you'll get assaulted, you know, you're a woman out at night, you know, saying really reasonable things. But she is not the person who didn't sleep for a couple of days. So I would always get to a point where I would just kind of give up. I would leave my house and just walk anywhere else, which meant the fountain and out here, a parking lot, typically filled with cars, but it's summertime. There was one week in particular that was the culmination of the entire semester. And that week, I didn't sleep for 5 days. Well, I slept for 4 hours in 5 days, which is already bad enough. But this was after the previous week where I missed probably a couple full nights, maybe 1 or 2. And the nights that I did sleep was like a few hours. This was the worst episode of insomnia I have ever had, I ever hope to have. People talk about like, oh, I wish I didn't have to sleep. Then I could get some. No, don't do it. Don't do it. It's so bad to not have distinctions between the days. Don't recommend it. But I was not eating. I was physically ill. I was mentally unwell too. So by like the first day, for me with sleep loss, one of the first symptoms is paranoia. So after about 24 hours or so, I start to experience that pretty bad of like, oh no, someone's behind me, someone's watching me, whatever. So the second day was just worse of the first. By the third day, I had a presentation due in one of my classes. By the time it was time for me to present, I hadn't slept in 3 days. So, not good. But I went to class and I was kind of freaking out because I just wasn't well. And my professor could see this, so she let me go out for like a 5-minute break just to get some air before presenting. I went outside, immediately had a panic attack that just kept going. When I finally came back, after everybody in my class left and they all walked by me because I was at one of the main exits, I went back to the classroom and the professor was like pissed because I had just abandoned class when I was supposed to present. I basically just said like, I haven't slept in 3 days. I went outside and I had a panic attack. That's what happened. So she gave me like a week to kind of calm down, get some sleep, take care of myself for a little bit, and then present the next week. And then when I did present, it was perfectly fine. By the 4th day, I started having the worst hallucinations I've ever had. And I've had hallucinations in the past, usually just like kind of things out of the corner of my eye or like feeling a tickle or something like that, but nothing like huge. And this also wasn't huge, but it was the paranoia that really messed with me, because it was 4 days of building paranoia. So with this, I was just sitting at my desk, like facing a black window. So I was scared to look up because I'm like, I'm gonna see a face, I'm gonna see a face, it's gonna be there, I'm gonna see a face. But that wasn't the hallucination. That entire time, I could hear footsteps behind me and I could feel someone breathing on my neck. So I would keep checking behind me to make sure the door was locked because I was alone for like every 10 minutes. I'd be so scared to turn around every single time, but I just kept doing it and kept doing it, and I still didn't get to sleep until like the next day. But there was one event in the middle of this whole week that I want to talk about the most. So one of these nights, instead of just rolling around in bed, instead of just being upset, I decided to come outside, which isn't the first time that I've done that, but this time it was like October, November, really cold. So I put on a bunch of jackets. I came outside and I just watched the clock tower. I don't know how long I was out here. I think it was around 3 a.m. but I just sat here and looked at it and no one else was here. I think it had rained, so like there was just water reflecting. And even though I was experiencing like all of this negative stuff, I still made a conscious choice to find something beautiful and value it for what it is. To not be upset that I couldn't sleep for another day, to come outside and actually experience that moment. Because I had nowhere else to be. That's a benefit that people don't really consider about insomnia, is like, I have moments that no one else does, where I can see a sunrise when everybody else is asleep, where I can see the moon super bright orange while everyone else is in bed. I write poetry in those times. I have nowhere else to be, so I can just come out here, look at a clock for as long as I want, and not feel like I'm wasting time. This is Bird. This is where like the doctor and the psychological services is. It's all in one place. I come here frequently. All of the health services are in the same building, which is really convenient, except for the fact that the first time I came here to get a prescription refill, I filled out the paperwork incorrectly and they had to call me back in to redo the paperwork. And this was the first time that I had done any of my medical anything by myself. So that was very stressful when I was already very stressed in a new place, barely 18, doing my own medical paperwork. So it was so stressful to the point where this building became an anxiety trigger for like my entire freshman year. And the health service building being a trigger made it really difficult for me to get help, because this is also where CAPS is, the Counseling and Psychological Services area. And I desperately needed counseling and psychological services. So it took me a long time to get an appointment, a long time to get myself to stand up, to come to this building. But eventually I made it work because I don't actually have to go into the health science or the health services entrance. The CAPS entrance can actually be around the back. For the first year of CAPS, I did something I'd never done before. I didn't have one-on-one therapy. Instead, I went to group seminars, which was like me and like 4 or 5 other people. For 3 weeks, we would just meet on a Wednesday and talk about things. I really liked my group. The topic that we were learning about was motion control, and it was interesting because all the people, or most of the people that I was with, all were overly emotional, and that was what they were trying to work on, how to manage that, whereas I was under emotional. I didn't know how to experience these emotions or how to put a name to them or how to live them in a healthy way. Because whenever I did experience something, I wouldn't recognize it, I would stress about it, my body would think it was an intrusive thing and try to shut it down. It was not healthy. I learned many things in those seminars that I still use basically every day. And there were 2 in particular. The first one is called Drop the Rope, which is the idea that if you are pulling a rope against someone, they're gonna pull the rope harder. So if you're in an emotional situation and you try to resist that and you try to push, well, then that negative situation is just gonna keep pushing just as hard. So like in tug of war, when you pull, the other side pulls harder and back and forth and back and forth. And there is a very effective way to stop it, which is just to let go. If you drop the rope, the person pulling, as hard as they were pulling, they're gonna fall back. And they can't do anything. You just let go of their power. It doesn't really matter if there's a win or lose because it's over now. So that was really helpful for me to learn because I'm so resistant to feeling whatever emotions, because I assume they're negative, that it was a good perspective to be like, okay, well, so what's it gonna do? And this goes with the second thing that I learned, which was emotions aren't scary, because they can't hurt you. No matter how bad it is, no matter how stressed, no matter how bad a panic attack, it cannot hurt you. So the technique that I learned was called RAIN, which was a way to kind of accept what you're feeling and figure it out from there. So the acronym was R, recognize the thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that are present. A, allow them to just be. I, investigate what they're trying to say, and N, non-identify with the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Which was revolutionary to me, from being so resistant to feeling these things to just realizing, oh, well, it can't hurt me, and they're trying to tell me something. Of course they are. It's not like emotions are bad in any context. So it recontextualized how I perceive my own emotions and what they're doing for me and how I can live alongside those things. So pretty soon after I learned that, I was very anxious, as I always am. I think I was doing homework late at night or something, and I was very stressed. And my normal reaction is to push that feeling away, don't deal with it because it's bad. So I decided to try something else because what do I have to lose? So I sat down, I put aside my homework, and I closed my eyes, and I ran through the acronym. I recognized the thought, feeling, and behavior, which was anxiety, stress. I allowed it to just be, which is difficult the first time. It's like giving a hug to someone trying to murder you, or who you think is trying to murder you. It is weird, but I did it. I loosened my muscles because I was braced against this thing, but I didn't have to be. So I accepted the feeling of anxiety. If I needed to cry, I would cry. If I needed to shake, I would shake. If I needed to panic, I would panic. But whatever it was, I would let it happen. I investigate what they were trying to say. In this case, I was doing homework late at night when it was due in like an hour. And that was not healthy for me to do. And so my emotions were trying to tell me that. And then N is non-identify, which is also difficult because I've lived most of my life being anxious. So the fact that I could separate myself out from that emotion was weird, and it took a lot of practice. But with all of that done, I was expecting, to cry, to shake, whatever. And then I just didn't. I just immediately felt better. I felt calm for the first time in my memory, where there was nothing in the back of my head, where my bones weren't shaking. I was just sitting there, aware of the fact that the assignment would probably take me like 30 minutes, and I still had an hour left. So I didn't need to be afraid of that. I didn't need to be afraid of the emotions trying to tell me that. I could just exist peacefully and quietly without trying to fight against that. In my second semester, my health and wellness class gave us an assignment to do basically any wellness practice that we don't usually do. So that can be counting calories, that can be exercising more. And I decided to do mental wellness. I did what I call sensory awareness, where every day I would see something beautiful, hear something beautiful, smell, taste, and touch something beautiful. Every single day, and I would record it. It didn't matter what it was. I could usually knock those out in one thing. Like if I'm eating a piece of chocolate, I can break it in half and I can hear it. I can see the little bubbles inside of it. I can taste it and feel the smooth in my mouth, and taste the sugar, and smell the chocolate. So I can do all of those at once. It wasn't supposed to be complicated, but the idea was just grounding myself in reality every single day. So during that assignment of the sensory awareness and stuff like that, and after what I learned with CAPS, one day I woke up, and for the first time in my memory, I was thankful to be here. I wanted to wake up. I was okay with the fact that I was awake, which was a weird feeling for me. I didn't want to forget this. So what I did was I wrote down what I call a thankfulness journal. And there was a particular way that I worded this journal. It was in the format of a poem, and it would always start the same way. It was, I, Lydia Fleming, am thankful to be here. It wasn't, I'm thankful for this, this, and this. I'm thankful to be here, to do this, to live this life. I'm thankful to be here not for food, but I'm thankful to be here to cook. Things like that. So it wasn't focusing on items or things that I have. It's experiences that I'm privileged to live now. It didn't have to be complicated. It didn't have to be big. I didn't have to be thankful to be here so I can achieve my dreams. I can be thankful to be here because the breeze is nice. Because the fountain sounds cool. Because I like to live here. And it always ended the same way. I am thankful to be here because today I smiled and today I laughed more than I will remember. This may change tomorrow, and that's okay, but for today, I'm thankful to be here. That was an important way to end it. Because I didn't want to overlook whatever positivity I experienced. If I smiled during the day, I wanted to remember that. I didn't want to brush it off as a bad day. I never smiled, whatever. If I smiled at any point, I would write it down. If I laughed at any point, then I would write it down. And if I didn't laugh or I didn't smile, then I wouldn't include it in the journal. And that was okay. That was an expectation that I set for myself. I left myself that out. But I never had to. Every single day, I did laugh. I did smile, even if it was small, even if it was just for a second. And one thing that happened alongside of this was Unos Honest, where it's just a dumb video posted every day. So I enjoyed those videos. And when I wrote my daily journal, I would think about a time that I laughed. And if I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head, I would think about the episode and remember, oh yeah, I laughed at this. Every single day. Every single day. That was what I could think of yes, I did laugh because I laughed at this video. So when I woke up feeling thankful to be here, I expected that to fade pretty fast, and it just didn't. after a few days, I still felt exactly the same way. So I kept writing the journals. I kept doing the sensory awareness. And for the next few weeks, I still felt the same way. I liked this feeling. I had the opportunity to embrace it and continue to get better. So I dedicated myself to being okay. I dedicated myself to being healthy, whatever that meant, I would do it. And then, like any good story has a plot twist, COVID happened. Right then, I was happy for the first time, or like substantially happy for the first time in February 2020. We went home for spring break, and then there was just a joke in my house of, my brother was the only one living there with my parents, so it was a running joke of, ooh, what would happen if I just didn't go back to school? Ooh. And then as COVID got more severe, it became more likely, and then I did not go back to school for 5 months. So when we got the news that we weren't coming back, we had one weekend to come get all our stuff. We drove down here, we had one night to pack up everything and then leave. But I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to get back in the building again. So on the way out, I stopped by the balcony. But I basically just said goodbye to that area because I had a lot of good moments there. I had a lot of influential moments there. And I wanted to commemorate the fact that this year on campus was over. This period was interesting because it was the middle of the semester and none of the professors that I had, at least, were used to doing online classes. So some of them just put all of their assignments as public and said, do it, and then when you're done, and that was great. I did them, and then I was done. One of my professors, it was just a conversational class where he would just go, it was a history class, and he would just go to the front of the class, talk for like an hour, just tell stories. I loved him. I loved that class. He was such a good storyteller. And then that would be it. So over COVID, he did the same thing, but just like on a conference call thing. It wasn't like a Zoom FaceTime video either. It was just a conference call. But people had to adapt, and it was just weird. Most of the things I could finish early. That was also the point where I got my first publication. But besides the whole like class stuff, it was weird to be back in that room, my room, where I had been sick all of high school. That was weird because it was reorganized at this point. It was a guest room, not my room. So it was a different bed, everything was in different places, but like I could just sit on the bed in the middle of the room and look around and just remember different trauma. Be like, I wanted to die up there, that's cool. I wanted to die over there, that's cool. I had a panic attack over there, that's cool. All over the room. Like, just all of these memories sprinkled around of this time where I was severely unwell, when now I was stable for the first time, like confidently stable. So I had to make this new life of my own in this place with so much negativity when I couldn't leave because it was COVID. So it was an interesting time because I thought I would spiral. I thought being in that room would just remind me of all of this bad stuff and I would fall into it again and whatever. But I didn't. I kept taking care of myself. I got done with all of my work early if that was possible. I kept writing and working on projects as the world continued to fall apart. I was living my life. I kept working on my anthology. I didn't really have expectations to finish it, of course not, but I would get up early, I would write, I would get stuff done, I would lay out all of the cards and just stare at them, all like 100 and however many, and I felt productive. I felt like myself, like who I was supposed to be if I hadn't been sick all those years. And I could maintain that. This is Judicola. I lived here for 2 years, my junior and sophomore year. I first moved in the semester that we got back from staying home for COVID, and the way that they did it was they delayed people, or they staggered when people could come in, and I really like this place, so I opted for the earliest possible time, which was 2 weeks before class started. It was a full week before even my roommates were gonna come, so I had a whole week just for myself in a place that I had never lived before, with nothing else happening on campus, just me hanging out. This was actually a big step for me because I never thought that I'd be able to live by myself in any capacity. I opted against having my own room the freshman year because I didn't really trust myself to be by myself all the time. At this point, I had a solid 6 months of stability, of it being in recovery. So it was my first big test for that. Could I live a life different than what I had always expected in high school? Could my life expectations change for the better? In order to fully embrace this opportunity, it was very tempting to set expectations for myself. I kind of had this issue when I was staying home for COVID. Do I spend this time getting something done or feel bad about myself for not getting things done? Or do I just focus on keeping myself okay? So that's what I decided to do. Instead of setting expectations for things I could finish, like my anthology, like stories or poetry or whatever, nothing. Whatever I did during that week, I would not feel bad about it. I had this time to do anything that I wanted. Nobody was around. So what did I do? Well, something I'd never done before. I took out my phone and started filming. What was there? Little videos that no one would see. Just spending my time trying something new. I think I heard something over here. False alarm, it's just me. It's been approximately 10 minutes since I've seen a TV. I don't know if I can make it. I think I have to tap out, but I'll keep pushing just in case. As I'm sure you can guess, I survived the week. I kept myself together, I kept up with my hygiene needs, with all of that stuff, making sure that I was fed, making sure that I was well. I ended up being friends with one of them in particular, and so for my birthday, I rarely have high expectations for birthdays, but for my 19th birthday, me and one of my roommates went out to the C-store and we just picked up a bunch of random ingredients. Because neither of us, we don't have a kitchen. We don't really have access to real food or anything. We are college students, so it's not like we're gonna go out and buy a cake or something. So we just went to the C-store and bought a bunch of random ingredients and came back and put them together into a monstrosity of a cake. But it was delicious. And it was fun, and we watched a snowboarding movie that was really bad after that. But it was an enjoyable birthday for once. During this time, in order to feel more put together in my day, I would dress up. I still do this. I really like dressing up to just feel good about myself. So I would still dress up. But the difference back then, which is really weird, is I would build my outfits around my mask. So for this one, I would wear the leafy berry one. And I just think about that when I think about my colors and the style and whatever. That was a point of consideration for how I presented myself. Which shoes should I wear? Which shoes will match the mask of choice? But everything else around campus was weird too. In our little welcome bag for showing up on campus, usually you get a map or a little flyer or whatever along with your keys and stuff. This time they gave out hand sanitizer and wet wipes. Here are my apocalypse masks, so that's nice. The school gave us some, and hand sanitizer and wipes, because why wouldn't a school give you those? And a school branded thermometer. They didn't do that the year before. They're giving this stuff out, and around the building there were big huge hand sanitizer containers just everywhere. By the elevator. The elevator had signs inside of only 3 people and stay away, stay separated. Just everything so fast from coming back to campus changed for COVID. And it was weird. Just in buildings, there were little dots on the floor of where you could stand so that you would be 6 feet away from people. There were signs around the library of you can't sit here, or there were all of the individual desks were separated out. Everything around here that I had gotten so used to seeing, that I had gotten so used to living in, was different. The weirdest part was the signage. Okay, that shouldn't be the weirdest part. Maybe the fact that we had to wear masks or that we had to be separate or whatever. No, the weirdest part was the fact that after coming back from break, everything had a professionally designed graphic everywhere of wash your hands. This is how you wash your hands. Ooh, stay safe for COVID. The little dots on the floor had the WCU logo and stay 6 feet apart. Just all of this stuff had been produced. Yet it felt like it should have taken longer to produce that. That was the weird thing about COVID, was everything was so fast. It had been around for a couple months, and then the NBA closed, and then, another few weeks, and then I just wasn't allowed to come home. And then when I do come back, everything is graphically designed. This was especially true of Brown. Brown is a beautiful building, but it has a lot of stairs. When I went, the most noticeable change was the length of the line to get any food, because that's all you could see. It was so long, everything was just blocked by people, because on the floor were big strips of tape that measured out 6 feet apart. So you have to wait in line 6 feet behind the person in front of you. This place serves thousands of people a day, and everybody had to be 6 feet apart. The line was broken up that much, so they had to put up ropes too, to guide where the line should form around the building to most effectively hold hundreds and hundreds of students at once. So you'd wait in line for like 30, 40 minutes, and then when you get there, you would see why the line was moving so slow, because it was no longer self-serve. There was no plexiglass in front of the food, which is true for like all of the food now, but they would have workers serving people to go along the way, which slows it down. I don't blame anybody for this, okay? They're doing their best. It would slow them down. The line would be even longer. They would have to rope off more area for a longer line and put down more tape to make the line even longer. It was weird. And then you weren't even allowed to eat in Brown. You had to eat outside. This was true everywhere. This was true of the caf as well. Whenever I got lunch, I was not allowed to eat inside. I had to eat outside. Brown luckily has some outdoor seating. The caf has very little, and the seating that is already there is already just taken by people sitting down. It's in the middle of campus. It's just outdoor seating. It's not specifically for the caf. It's not specifically for any of the restaurants. It's not specifically for Starbucks. It's not specifically for food at all. So there's just a line of tables that are shared amongst all of this. And that is the only space that anyone has to eat their food. So some people would eat at home. I usually ate at home. Some people would eat at the fountain, or there were service learning tents. It was just a big awning type deal with some seats under it that people could go to. I usually had supper at Brown, which had more outdoor seating. It still wasn't a ton. So sometimes, especially my junior year, I just went home to eat, but I didn't mind eating outside if there was space. So over here is where we had to eat a lot of the times during COVID, because we couldn't all sit inside. So we would all come out here or go to our dorms or whatever. Sometimes I would finally convince myself to get up and eat something. I would go out for my one time a day and come out over here, and it would turn out to be a weekend. I would forget that it was a weekend and it would be closed. So then I would just consider not eating at all or whatever, and it was not good. When we ate out here, there used to be a ton of bees. I'm not afraid of bees anymore because we ate outside every day and there'd be bees everywhere. So it just got to the point where as long as a bee was not on my fork, in my food, about to go in my mouth, I didn't really care. These stairs were very difficult. When I was not eating enough, when I was severely anemic, you know, it was a challenge to get up them every day. But sometimes I would take a break over here. Just watch the sunset over that mountain. At one point, I came up here and I had my notebook and I just sat right on that ledge, watching the sunset, listening to Olivia Rodrigo, and just writing a love poem. I didn't really do that very often, so it was nice to be able to fully experience a moment and record it on just a beautiful day. My walk home from Brown is very nice. You can hear the birds, but at night it does get kind of spooky when I'm walking home by myself and I just have my AirPods in, because it gets very dark and a lot of the lighting just doesn't work. It's all downhill, so it's good. There was one day where I didn't sleep, like at night, so I made it to breakfast. So it used to be the like marker for if I couldn't sleep overnight, I would just make it to breakfast. And those were the only times I went to Brown in the morning. But one time I did that and I came home and I was like about to pass out. Like I could not walk all the way home. So I just like took a break over here. I think I came over here too when I was recording, or when I was telling Ben the first episode. But that's beside the point. When I was very unwell, and I was only going outside of my house like once a day, and I was borderline agoraphobic, part of the reason why I didn't want to go outside was because I was convinced that this building was gonna fall on me and kill me, and I was safer if I stayed inside. But at least I did make it outside. There was only one day, I think, where I didn't go outside because I couldn't. But here's Judicola, very hidden away. It's a good stroll. But this is when it starts to get spooky at night, because that brick wall, right? That is not lit up at night. It's just a brick wall blocked to block everything from sight, and just like a dark parking lot. It's not great. Then there's another one, just a brick wall blocking off whoever wants to hide. Pretty sure that light didn't work. That light didn't work. I think that light didn't work. So it's just dark and shadowy and a lonely parking lot with lots of hiding places. Not very good. My walk to class, my walk to campus was much nicer and much less scary. We're just walking down the way.
We're
wandering. So like I would walk home this way after class, and I would walk this way. And my choice of song while going to like class or something was always Sour Candy by Milk. Good walking song. Oh, here's an area. This is a church with a little inclusion sign on it, which is good because I met a cute girl here one time. I was like, damn, she's kind of cute. Anyway, and that's the extent of that.
Just once, there's no more of them.
Yeah. With this girl, I knew she was like an UP volunteer. So I knew I would be able to see her with like future shifts just happening upon her. And it was nice because she's a cool dude. And then she was straight. That was okay. Fun story.
Hate when that happens?
I don't really mind it. I get over people pretty fast if they're straight, but that was fun. I was all excited to be excited about someone, and it was nice. I was like, oh my god, how do I tell her I'm gay? Oh no, how do I do it? How do I do it? So what I did was before an exam, we were like texting, And I was like, something about not being able to sit straight, to like code me being gay.
Yeah.
Like, I can't sit straight, I'm too gay for this, or something like that. And then I started my exam, and I couldn't check my text because it was on the lockdown browser. So I just did my entire exam like, oh, what's she gonna say? Like, all excited and stuff. And then she said, and then she immediately got what I was trying to say. She's like, oh, I wouldn't get it. I'm straight. Yeah. But yeah.
The worst.
Haven't felt that way ever since. I didn't really do much my sophomore year for obvious reasons. COVID kept everyone inside. Most of my classes were online. But when I did go out, it was mostly for up shifts. So there's not really much more to show you for this year in particular, but I still just want to talk for a second. Because a lot happened that year. A lot of people had a really rough 2020 because everything was changing, everything was new. Maybe they were sick, maybe they lost someone, right? For most of the country, 2020 was pretty bad, which is weird because 2020 was the best year of my life. The first time I had ever been healthy, the first time I realized that I could be healthy. It was great. The first semester of sophomore year, I came back, I transitioned well, but by the third semester online, I kind of lost all motivation to try. I had no routine. At least my first semester, there was some sort of routine with my class schedule, but the second semester of sophomore year, most of my classes were asynchronous, so there wasn't any routine there. It was all online, so I wasn't going outside. It got to the point where even if I was just staying inside anyway, logging onto class became a choice. Because why would I bother logging into class? It's not like I'm going to learn anything anyway. I don't learn from online, so why bother wasting my time when I could waste my time falling into myself? I was entirely burnt out from doing work on my computer for classes that I was just nonsensing my way through. So I just stopped. Unsurprisingly, I failed my classes that semester. Well, most of them. The highest grade that I got that semester was a D+, which was a required class for my major. But I passed it. But that was just part of it. Just the fact that I failed my classes. That was the effect of everything that had been going on, because that semester I didn't talk to anybody. Which seems like a weird way to put it, because it's like, yeah, we were all inside, people didn't really go out and socialize, but that's not what I mean. I mean, I didn't say words all day. My only vocabulary during the day was when I would swipe my card at Brown and say, meal exchange. And that's it, 2 words a day, that's all I said. About once a week, near the end of the semester, I would call Ben, and for about an hour, I would actually have a conversation, and that would be the only social exchange I had the entire time. My routine was so lacking that even though I was home all the time, I missed a full night of sleep at least once a week. And the nights that I did sleep was probably like 5 hours. I had nothing to ground myself with this. I didn't have friends on campus. I stopped getting up shifts because I didn't want to go to campus. I didn't really see the point. I left my house, I left my dorm once a day to go pick up food. And yes, me going to Brown once a day meant that I was eating once a day too. Not a huge meal either, usually half of one meal a day, because that's all I could bother to do to get myself up to go outside. When I did have food in front of me, it was near impossible to eat it. Some days I would get through half a meal. Some days I would have to hold my nose to eat bites of rice because it was so impossible. I lost a lot of weight. I just started losing it and could not stop. And that was scary for me. I had had problems with eating, but I had never lost weight before. So this was the first time where I had a physical effect of this mental problem that I had been writing off for years as it's fine, I'm not losing weight or anything, whatever. Even though I later learned that it was just a way to hurt myself in a way that wouldn't leave a mark. But now it was leaving a mark. I started losing weight, just a few pounds, but that was enough for me to notice that something was wrong. And then I just didn't stop. I got to the mentality of, I refused to be underweight, okay? As if that meant anything, like I was already having health problems. Underweight is relative. I looked, here's a picture of how I looked. It just doesn't look right. I would see myself in the mirror after knowing exactly what I looked like for the past, 5-7 years. And then I just wasn't that anymore. It took a year to gain any significant amount of it back. I'm still not where I was. Eating is still difficult sometimes, and it's rough. I couldn't walk upstairs without almost passing out. I couldn't walk the quarter mile to class without taking several breaks. And by that, I don't even mean stopping and catching my breath. I mean, I would have to sit down on the ground in the middle of a sidewalk to not pass out before I could continue another 100 feet or so. I could obviously recognize that there was an issue, so I considered CAPS again, which was online this semester, because of course it was. But this experience was very different than the one I had before. This time it was one-on-one, and I was not ready to improve because we would talk about eating and I just wouldn't change any of my habits. I was failing my classes and I told her about this, and I just never turned in my work. Nothing that I do changed because of that. Instead, I just became embarrassed about the fact that I wasn't doing anything, the fact that I wasn't maintaining any of my goals, not even to get A's in all my classes and eat all of my food, just maintain where I was even at that low point, and I just was not maintaining that. But even as low and disheartening this time was, it would have been really easy to spiral. It would have been really easy to just get back to that point in high school and just wonder how I'll make it to tomorrow. But there was still a difference, because I had felt what it was like to be okay. I had learned, I had figured out that that was possible, that I could do that I was capable of making myself better, and I knew what that felt like. And I knew that it was worth working to that point. So even though I was having the worst eating experiences of my life, having the worst physical effects of any of my mental illnesses I've ever had, maybe other than the insomnia, even though I was failing all my classes for the first time ever, I was not being receptive in therapy, I was not talking to anybody at all, even then, I still wasn't scared, because I was aware of what this was. It was a relapse. And if I could make a reality beyond high school, like I never thought was possible, then I would be able to do it again. And part of that was just wanting to feel anything at all. I also used to walk around from Judicola in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep for basically the same reasons, just to get out of bed instead of rolling around all night, to get somewhere new, to hear the bugs, just make some sort of value from the night instead of just wasting it, and take that moment to understand, I have nowhere else to be. I'm not going to be sleeping anyway, so I can just go outside, go for a walk, whatever. But I want to talk about one day in particular, which was when I was sitting down to do my thankfulness journal, as I did every day, and then I realized that I was not thankful to be here. And I wasn't going to lie to myself. That was never part of those journals. I was never going to write it just to humor myself or whatever. I was going to be honest, and I wasn't thankful to be here. Because for a long time, up until that point, I hadn't really felt anything. I hadn't felt like angry or sad. I was just numb, like I was in high school, and that was scary. I decided that no matter what, I was going to feel something. So at like 11 o'clock at night, instead of going to bed or doing whatever, I got up and I went outside. And it was cold and it was rainy, but I could feel the rain on my skin. I could feel the cold air make those raindrops even colder on my skin, but I still valued it. So that night I walked all the way over here to the university center where there's just random swings back here. Ignore the squeaking sounds. But I came down here with Emily one day and we were just talking about some random stuff. I think it was about like spiders going to college or something like that. And we were just laughing and she got tired of the joke really fast, but I just kept going along with it until she was really irritated. But it's okay, it was funny. But when I walked up here that night, it was very different because I was so... Those times when I was with Emily, I was laughing, I was having fun, but the time that I walked up here, I was completely alone. I was by myself because I was just trying to get out and to feel something, and it was still raining. So I just came out here at like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock or whatever. I just sat on the swings waiting for something to happen. Like feeling the rain, or it didn't really matter. Like I was just waiting to feel upset or cry or do whatever. I don't even remember what exactly happened, but I do remember that the main thing I was worried about was that I would forget that day, was that it would just kind of blend in with the rest, kind of like all of the second semester of sophomore year, like I've been talking about. I was really worried about that happening. So I just insisted on remembering today. So of course I did what I always do and I wrote a poem about it. There were a few things that I forgot to mention about my sophomore year, and one of those things was just that I took a drawing class, so here are some of those pictures. But I more wanted to add that during the third semester, everything was online, right? I was on my computer all day long, which was true for a lot of people. But it got to the point where my eyesight was getting worse just because I was constantly focusing on things this far away from my face and not things in the distance. So I got homework from the eye doctor to look at things far away all the time. Also, more embarrassingly, one of the weird things about being on my computer all day was that when I went outside, it would be orangish because of the sun, and my brain would have to connect to the fact that it was not, in fact, my flux filter on my computer that I needed to turn off. It was just real life. Same with the fact that I would play Minecraft all the time, and that's what I would not do my classes for. I would just play it instead, or during classes, or whatever. So when I went outside, it would just look like someone put on the HD filter. And again, I'd have to remind myself, no, this is just outside. But that's just another example of how bad that year actually did get for me. By my junior year, I was tired of being inside. I was tired of not talking to anyone. So when it got to my 20th birthday and I was back on campus and I could see my friends again, I was excited to see Emily. I had barely seen Emily in the past year, just partially from COVID and me not going outside ever or being well enough to talk to people. So I hadn't talked to her in a long time. So we made plans for my birthday. I don't usually have high standards or high expectations for birthdays. They can be pretty stressful. But for once, I was really looking forward to it. So we planned on meeting here by the fountain, going in and getting some food, maybe watching a movie, whatever. Just finally spending time with a friend on campus for the first time in forever. We had talked through the plan the day before, so we agreed to a certain time. I came on campus, so excited, of course. And she still wasn't here, so I figured, okay, it might just be going a bit long. I waited like 10 more minutes and I texted her like, hey, what's up? Didn't get anything. So I waited some more, like 20 more minutes. Still no response. So eventually, after it had been probably an hour, I texted her. It was like, I was very upset at this point. So I said like, if you didn't want to hang out, you could have just said so, I'm going home. And then she decided to finally respond. Normally, if I were in that situation and someone was like, hey, I'm upset, I'm going home, I would be like, oh, I'm so sorry, because she was saying the meeting went long and her phone was dead and things like that. But she didn't at all express any empathy. She just said like, the meeting went long, I didn't have my phone, why are you upset? Things like that. But even then, I was still young and in love, kind of, even after so long, or at least in love with the idea of having her in my life. So I still contacted her a couple of times, just like, that was weird, right? Like, can we meet up or something? Can we talk about it? And eventually she just stopped responding. Even though at this point it was clear that she didn't really care about me, at least not in the same way that I cared about her, it was still an important moment for me because I've expressed that heartbreak in the purple chair, right? But instead of being heartbroken at a lost opportunity, it was more of just anger and frustration because I had been in love with her for 2 years and she just didn't bother giving me any amount of closure. I mean, she didn't know I was in love with her. I don't know. I'm not that subtle, but just that it would end so abruptly without a reason, without explanation, without even a conversation. I just have all these questions, even a couple years later. Even with how that ended, I still value that time together, okay? Like, I still love that feeling of being in love when everything was falling apart. I still love that feeling of finding my identity, of feeling that way for someone for the first time. That still means a lot to me. But now that she wasn't in my life anymore, not much changed. It was just, I was so desperate to have friends, to be social in any way, that losing that opportunity kind of sucked. I was afraid of having another semester like the last one, where everything fell apart, where I was severely unwell in so many ways. I knew I had the power to get better because I had done it before, so I insisted on putting that work in, figuring out what would work for me again, and getting back to that point of being healthy. So I did the most basic things that I could do. I ate my food. I went to class. I said words out loud. Because I knew that if I didn't start doing all of these things from the beginning, it would just be harder to put myself together. It would be harder to catch up. If I missed assignments in classes, if I didn't get a head start, I would just be in the same position as last time. If I kept making exceptions for eating my food, I would be just as bad off as last time. So it still wasn't perfect, but I was passing my classes. I stopped losing weight. I was at least neutral. I wasn't getting worse. And one thing that I was doing this year that had actually started last year, way at the end, was I started telling the episodes to Ben, which is just a stupid story. It doesn't really matter, but it was something to work toward. Somewhere to put my attention, get myself back to telling stories, have an accomplishment where I could put all of this work into an episode, I could tell it and then it would be done and I could move on and I could feel proud of what I made. I have so many projects that I never finish. Sometimes because I move on, sometimes because I get a new project, sometimes because there just is no end to any project that I do. There's always more editing to do. There's always more writing, more scenes, more changes, whatever. So to have this, where as soon as I edit it and as soon as I upload it to YouTube, which is just where I keep my videos, it was done. It was something that I could look toward and see, this is my complete work that I put a lot of time in. This is a representation of where I am right now. This year also came after a year or so of not going outside and not making memories. Not interacting with people, not going anywhere, nothing to remember from that year other than being sick. So this year I was insistent on doing everything, taking every opportunity that I could to make new memories. Really, since coming to campus, the only time I left was to go home or to pick up my pills. So to actually go somewhere, to go on a drive, to go to someone's house and just watch a movie. I did all of this stuff because I didn't want to lose another year to COVID or to sickness. Because all of high school, I kept having to make those decisions of how to preserve my energy so that I could take care of myself. I couldn't have those friends because I was taking care of myself. By the second semester, I met Jonas. A year and a half ago, we were in line to pick up our books and he recognized me from class. So he said, "Hey, I recognize you from class. My name is Jonas." And then that was it. That was the extent of the story. Although after that, I did try really hard to remember his name before our next class because I thought he was really interesting. And then I think I forgot what his name was, but I tried really hard. He was also a really cool person that I wanted to get to know, and I liked him immediately. And so we were just chatting, we were just texting, whatever, and I was really interested in this person. Still am, by the way. But I was really interested in him until he mentioned that he had a girlfriend. I was like, oh, fine. But it was still that feeling of liking a person, and it was the same way that I felt with Emily, of liking that feeling of liking a person, of having that energy to put into someone else, having that positivity to put into someone else. Even if, again, we couldn't be together, but we were still friends. And the first time that we hung out outside of class, he basically told me to come outside. I'm like, well, this sounds interesting. Absolutely, sure, whatever this is sounds at least entertaining. So I go outside, and it was still winter, and so it actually snowed. And I walk outside and I'm walking down to center campus. And as I'm going, I just get hit with a snowball. Because of course I do. Because he saw me on the way and just started throwing stuff at me. Because what else would you do when you see a friend walking by and there's snow on the ground? Can't blame him. It was fun. So close! He used to throw parties just with some friends. Like one of them was a PowerPoint party where people just made a PowerPoint presentation on whatever they wanted to. My favorite one was a straight man who did a presentation on Disney dads, and he scored them on different areas, including their rice purity test score and how many shots it would take for him to sleep with them. And for one of them is Mr. Incredible, and he said it would take one shot merely for courage. That's beside the point though. So he had these parties and things just at his apartment. And so one day he made the mistake of making a bet with me. Okay, because we had been doing Wordle, which is just a word game. And so he bet that I wouldn't be able to get the word, because, I mean, he had been cheating multiple times at this point. Yikes. But he had done the Wordle and he bet me that I wouldn't be able to get it. And the thing was food. If I guessed it, he would owe me food. If I didn't guess it, I would owe him food. So it took me all 6 tries, but I got the word, and it was zesty, which was really difficult. but I got it and he owed me food. I figured we would just go over to like the caf or to one of the restaurants under the caf and eat something there, but instead he had me over to make me food, make some pasta, so good, and watch the Batman. Near the end of the semester, I went with Jonas and a bunch of his friends to the fair around here, which had like a Ferris wheel and some rides and stuff, and we fit 5 people, like 5 grown adults, into one of those teacup spinny things, and the person running the machine is so underpaid. He did not care at all. As long as we could close the door, he didn't care how many people were in there. And then afterwards, we came over to Chili's.
We did.
Whoa.
I love Chili's.
Yeah, and he didn't remember this, but I told him. That's when he told me he was separated from his girlfriend. I was like, oh no, so sad.
So sad.
It's so unfortunate. In the kindest way that I can think of. But then we walked over here just at night when it was really cold, just because he wanted to walk me home, but it was pretty far. So instead, we walked over to the train stop. I think it's right here, to this little area, and that was it. We walked a whole 10 feet. I was still doing other things on campus though. It was my 3rd year, so still like doing classes and whatever and going around. So here's more of that. Up here did not used to look like this. It used to be full of like comfy chairs and places that you actually wanted to sit and study, and now it's just really uncomfortable everything. But I guess it looks cool. This is actually one of the first places that I came during orientation, and I saw those masks and I completely forgot where they were or what they were, but it's just a memory in my head of masks. There's Spider-Man playing for some reason. These also used to be really comfy, just old couches, and now they're not. Oh, here's still good. Oh, this is nice. Oh, perfect. This is the balcony outside of the UC. It's pretty cool and it's really comfy. But I used to do, not summer classes, but online classes. But it's really nice just to like watch it rain or if it's cold or whatever. It's usually pretty chill, not many people. Well, sometimes people are out here because it's a nice place to go. But I used to come out here with Jonas between classes and we'd just do whatever, play games, whatever. Just hang out for a bit. That was before we were dating, but it's nice. This is one of my favorite places on campus. It just opened a couple of years ago, but it's a new study room area. It opened right after COVID. So even though it's been a couple years, there's still a lot of people who don't know about it. But it's a nice, this is where I come and do all my work. Specifically this booth. One specific thing about this booth is one day Jonas was sick and it was after class and I came by and I was really excited to give him something. So he waited, whatever. I came by and he told me about how he wasn't feeling great. I was like, oh yeah, that's so unfortunate. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And then I gave him the letter that said I loved you for the first time. And like a weirdo, he skipped to the end, he saw what it said, and then he almost started crying before he even read it. So next time I'll have to adjust for that, I guess. You know, and there's so many more next times for things like that. I like this area. I used to do Zoom classes in here, but the lights are motion censored. So if you sit in one place for too long, it just turns off on you. You have to stand up and jump around a little bit before it turns back on. Also about Jonas, I would come by after my I would come by before my class, and I would wait over here and I would just hang out a little bit and wait for him to get off of work. But he would come by and he would get a whole bunch of free stuff from Starbucks, just whatever they had left over, and it would give me like a muffin or something, and we would just hang out here before my class, and I would have to do reading for whatever book we were reading in class, and he would just read it over my shoulder. kept me engaged in my classes. Although one time, instead of doing that, we played a game of, not Pig 2, we haven't played Pig 2 in a while. Instead, what we do is we just dump out all of the pieces and just try to make a grid and see how long it takes. And we did that and just took up a whole bunch of space. One day, I decided to count up all my quarters because Princess Penelope has been full forever. So I counted up all my quarters and I had like $50 and I really wanted to go to an arcade, but no arcades take quarters anymore. It's all those like swipe cards. But the school happens to have a few machines right here and a few more over there. But these ones actually take quarters and they're so old that they run on just 1 quarter. Again, normally it would be like at least $1, but we just came here for an evening and just played some games really loudly because there's a skate ball in the middle of like a study building. Here are the rest of the games. I was doing this one and I was not good at it. I also did this one and I was pretty okay, but he was doing this one and he was just going and going and going. I don't know how many levels he got to, but he had to come by while I was over doing the pinball and ask for more quarters because he just kept playing this game. In the upstairs area, just on the couches, I was feeling pretty neutral, but I was just thinking about it and I kind of realized that the mountains weren't beautiful, which sounds weird. Let me explain. I live in a beautiful place. Look at that. Oh my God, I'm so lucky to be here, and I know that. At that point in time, I couldn't register the beauty of where I am. I felt that way about a lot of things for a while at that point, and that was a pretty common issue for me when I was depressed, was that I just wouldn't feel anything for things that I knew I should feel something for. Like in this case, the mountain should be beautiful. So I was just sitting in the UC, just on the couches, and I was listening to music, and a song came on my playlist that I'd never heard before, or at least that I didn't remember. It was on my playlist, so technically I must have heard it before, but I did not remember it at all. But the song came on, it was Aijungorni, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's fine. And I was just sitting there and completely moved by this song. And I was thinking about it and I realized that it had been a couple months since I just cried, which is not really a good thing. So I was so aware because of this song of my emotional state that I just wanted to sit down. I just wanted to cry for a bit and feel anything in that way. Senior year marked the beginning of my relationship with Jonas. The only experience that I've had with wanting to be with someone was my freshman year when I was in love, but I couldn't date. I wasn't ready. I wasn't well, and I didn't ever consider the fact that I might get to a position where I could be ready to date. But before that could happen, I would have to figure out how to live a life at all. And over the past couple years, I had been doing that. I had improved a lot. I had learned how to take care of myself. I had learned about emotions and how to feel. So I was better than I had been my freshman year, but it still wasn't perfect. It was all very new to me, so I frequently found myself comparing what I felt to what I would expect from a normal person. Someone who wasn't experiencing depression or had never experienced it or didn't have to learn in college how to feel emotions. So I'd always wonder if what I was feeling was correct, which is nonsense. That's not how it works, as I learned in therapy also this year. That's not how emotions work. There's no way that I should feel, there's no way that things should happen. It just kind of does. I felt more secure in myself, so I figured I was ready to start to try dating. So over the summer before my senior year, I asked Jonas out on a date. And I'm always honest with myself, and I always will be honest with myself. I knew that if at any point I thought I wasn't ready, If at any point I felt like I wasn't prioritizing myself, I would step right back and I would give myself whatever time I needed. When it got to the actual date, I was nervous. Not because I wasn't sure how the date was going to go. Keep in mind, this was the first date I had ever been on, but I was nervous about how I was going to feel. If I would feel the wrong way or I wouldn't feel anything. That's what scared me, and that's what I didn't want to happen. So we went on the date, and the date was perfect. We went on a picnic in the mountains. It was a beautiful day. Had a great conversation with this person I really like, but something still felt off. Because the entire date, I was still wondering. I was still not sure how I was supposed to feel. I was not sure how I was feeling. Was it supposed to be like this, electric connection? Was I supposed to notice something crazy happen? I didn't know, and because I didn't know, and because nothing crazy did happen, I felt like what I was feeling was wrong. All of these things kept going through my head, so even though it was this perfect date, I don't remember what we talked about. I just remember being so worried the entire time. It also doesn't help that my only experience with this kind of thing was back with Emily, when I knew exactly how I felt right away, and I just didn't with that date. But I knew that me considering how I should be feeling and all that was completely unrealistic, so I gave it another shot and we went on another date. And this one was just a movie at his apartment, and I felt exactly the same way. Constant anxiety about how I should be feeling. Halfway through the movie, I knew that I wasn't ready. And there's no use lying about it or dragging things along if I didn't think that I was ready to date. So I told him. And then I began my senior year of college. And after losing 2 years of college to COVID, this was my last chance to finish out this time of my life in a way that I could be proud of. And just like last year, a big priority for me was making memories and living new life experiences. One of those life experiences being living off campus in my own apartment. I started back in therapy, and this time I was much more receptive to the suggestions. I was much more capable of change and improving myself. So it was more successful than it had been my sophomore year. And I spent more time with Jonas, which was part of the reason why I was never on campus this semester. We were just watching movies like every day and going out for drives either on the parkway, or there was a caribou crossing somewhere nearby, and we went to Cades Cove and saw a bear. Well, we saw a lot of animals, but a bear passed right next to us.
Oh my god, oh my god, it's a fucking bear!
It's running, it's running!
Where is he going? He's
Oh my god! Run,
my
boy,
God.
run! I actually had the time that I needed to naturally develop how I was feeling with Jonas rather than trying to figure it out quickly under the pressure of the word of a date or a relationship. Instead, it was just I could spend time with him, and I enjoyed spending time with him, and I wanted to spend more time with him in the future. So after about a month of this, I felt more comfortable using the word relationship. And so that year became about us just living our life together. We cooked every day, making new recipes or changing up old ones, because I have a lot of technical experience and he has more experience with flavors and things. So we would make really good food every day. He also started doing presentations, talking about male survivors of domestic violence, going to classes and clubs and things. So I would support him wherever I could, either going to the presentations or tabling events, whatever he was up to. Just like every year, I also did Inktober, of course. And it was just a time where it could be a casual beginning to a relationship. except for the fact that he was graduating a semester before me. And after he graduated, he would be moving back to Raleigh. And that would be in December, about 4 months after we started dating, which meant that by 2 or 3 months into a relationship, we were having these conversations about what we expected for the distant future. And that was tough for me because I had only been in a relationship for 2 months total and had no experience before that. So I was just rushing through these first stages of a relationship without knowing what I could expect for the future, and yet making these decisions for what I didn't know. But that just made us value what time we had even more. So one of the things that we did just as weekend trips, we would go out and explore random cities, just stop wherever looked interesting. So we went to Bryson City and Asheville, and one of the ones that we went to was Gatlinburg, which we never actually planned on going to. We saw this thing that we assumed was for a hike nearby, and then we just drove a couple hours to find it, and then there were these huge buildings and amusement park type of town. Crazy. But that was actually the day that first got me thinking about Jonas in a permanent, long-term kind of way, because we didn't plan on going to Gatlinburg, but we did, and we just didn't have any plans. So we would just see something interesting and then go for it and go try it out, and then see something else interesting and go for it. And it was fun, and that was the first time where I thought about that as something that I wanted in my life, and when I did, I always saw that with Jonas. We were well off in our relationship, but I was still unwell. I will always be unwell. It's chronic illness. And I'm used to that, like with my writing. I love writing. It is something that I identify by with my work. It's something that I care about and work toward really hard. But there are several times, maybe a few times a year, where I go through a depressive episode or an anxious episode, and I lose that. Where the numbness comes back and I lose that drive for this thing that I really, really love and that I care about. And at first, that was kind of scary because I thought that I had lost something. But it took a few cycles of getting past the depressive episode and regaining that passion to know that it really was a temporary side effect. So I got used to that. I know that sometimes I get sick, and that's just part of my life. But I didn't consider how Jonas would factor into that. So one day we were going to a carnival on campus that happens a couple times a year. Always fun, I always look forward to it. But I had been so anxious for several days leading up to that, to the point where way at the beginning of the carnival, I felt for the first time in probably a couple years that I was going to have a panic attack. I didn't, but Jonas took me home, and I just sat down on his couch and started overthinking everything. I was again overthinking how I felt like I was supposed to feel, because when I looked at Jonas that day, I didn't feel the same as I had the day before. I did not love him in the same way, and that scared me. I didn't know that this chronic illness that I had gotten so used to could possibly impact my life in that way. I didn't know if that's what it was. I didn't know if I just did feel differently about him. And I didn't know what to do with that. I kept trying to remember that I did in fact love him. I didn't have that precedent to know that this would happen, that I would feel that numbness again toward him, and that it would be okay and that would be temporary. And it still worried me when it happened again. I know it'll happen again. That's just the process. But the question kept coming up. I know that I love him, so why am I wondering? And naturally that comparison goes back to Emily, because I didn't wonder with her. It was love at first sight. I knew exactly how I felt, and that was it. So why was it so easy with her and difficult with Jonas? And it took me a long time to realize that Emily wasn't real. That's it. That's the difference. Emily was a fairy tale. She was something that I could hold on to, but there was no pressure for it to be anything. That I could love her and that was the end of it. Because nothing relied on me using that word. Nothing would change if I didn't love her. I value how I felt in that time, I do, but there was nothing of value between us. Whereas Jonas is real. The question of if I love him matters because that is what keeps us together. This is all new to me. So of course I'm going to be asking these questions. So of course I'm going to be wondering. I want to be set in how I feel, and for me, that isn't just feeling an emotion. That's asking these questions and answering them, because the answer is yes. I love Jonas, and Jonas loves me, and because of that, we can have a life together. And unlike Emily, Jonas is real, and Jonas decided to stay. Meanwhile, I went to Mexico for a week to help build a school that my grandparents have been working on for like a decade, which was fun. I put up a ceiling all by myself. We could see the kids there because they were attending school at the same time, so we could see them running around and having fun and doing dances. It was a great time. But when I got back, that was when Jonas did graduate. So after the first semester, I actually wrote a lot less poetry because we were actually going out and doing stuff. For example, for New Year's, Jonas came up to DC to see me and my family, and then we went together back down to Raleigh so I could see his family, and we went back to Koloi so I could finish out my classes, and he started work at Meridian. But we got a cat named Duchess, and we played games just about every day. Some board games, some video games. Now, while I'm in Virginia, we play a lot of the online Play-Doh games. Still mostly Uno. And that's how we chose to spend our time. I had a lot more time than he did because he would work for most of the day and my classes were only a couple hours. So one thing that I started doing to pass the time, other than just work on the episodes, was I started making videos, which makes sense because every couple of years I changed medium from short stories to books to poetry to verbal stories to now videos. A lot of what I write, especially through high school and college, was to remember, because my memory was all messed up too. So I could remember what happened and why it was important and what came of it and what I thought of it. All of that was very reflective. But these videos, most of the time, were just recording a direct experience. Not really anything to say about it, just a snapshot of what's happening.
How am I supposed to sit in the washing machine? It's got this big thing in it.
No, don't sit in the washing machine.
How am I supposed to be clean? I'm not sleeping. I tricked you. Women deserve more. Maybe not money.
And the biggest project so far is this video. It started with me just walking around campus recording random things. I decided that I'm gonna go walk around campus over the next few days because there's a lot that I want to talk about. And I'm just gonna talk about what I like. See, here's more mountains. And more mountains. I got over 5 hours of footage so I could put it together and tell the story of how I got to this point, which is graduation. I ended the semester with all A's. For the first time probably since my freshman year, and it wasn't even a goal I was going for. I just put myself into the last semester of being healthy and being stable, and because of that, I was able to succeed like I had freshman year. And I graduated, but I wasn't actually sure if I did. I thought I was gonna get an email saying I missed a credit, or that I actually failed a class, or that I failed too many classes and I couldn't graduate, or something like that. I just didn't feel like I earned it. I thought about all those classes that I missed. I thought about all of those projects that I never turned in. I thought about all of those classes that I failed, that I knew I could have excelled in if I had tried harder, if I had actually put myself into it. So the whole thing, I didn't feel like I belonged in that procession. On graduation day, when we were lining up, I looked around and I saw everyone else dressed the same as me, and yet I felt like I didn't belong there. And to be honest, I still kind of feel that way. Where I earned, back in freshman year, I earned that publication. Where it was an assignment, but I didn't treat it like an assignment. I treated it as a goal, something I could achieve, something that I could do more than was expected of me. Because I knew I could do better than that. Writing that essay was something that I put myself into, that I worked hard for, and that I was recognized for. I was proud of that. But I didn't feel that way about graduating. With graduation, and when my family was here and we were all celebrating, they were all excited and I wasn't. Because college for me was never a top priority, which is weird for graduates, right? It's something that they've been working hard for several years. And yet I didn't feel that way. Because my top priority has always been keeping myself safe, keeping myself healthy. So I don't see graduation as this overwhelming success, because it's overshadowed by what meant more to me, which is that I'm better than I was 4 years ago. I am physically and mentally healthier. So with all of this, with everything I've just said, I don't regret anything about college. I don't regret losing 2 years to COVID. I don't regret Emily and heartbreak. I thought that I would feel bad about myself for not writing as much, for not finishing my anthology. But I just don't. I lived my college career the best that I could, so why would I feel bad about the times that it was difficult? Now I'm in an interesting point. Because all my life, I've been being prepared for the next part of school. Everything is just constantly building to, oh, you just gotta be prepared for this next aspect of class. Like right now, it doesn't really matter. You just need to work to get to that point. Which is really weird, because that's been my entire life. And up until now, I thought that would be my entire life too, right? I didn't think I would make it past high school. I didn't think I would make it past that phase. I didn't think I would make it to the point that people were preparing us for. But now, I'm here. I'm not going to graduate school. I'm not getting a PhD. I finished my last exam. I have finished my last paper. I have done all of the preparing for school that I can, and now I'm just living my life. So what happens next? Honestly, I don't know. And I don't need to know. My job for the past 4 years has been to get to this point. And I'm here. I finished my classes, I graduated, I have an apartment, I'm working on getting a job, I am stable, I am healthy, I am happy, and that's all that I need to be in order for this part of my life to be a success. So in that way, I'm done. I've done my job. Whatever happens next is up to the future Lydia, the next one to come up, she'll figure out the job situation. She'll find her way to be happy and fulfilled, and I trust her to do that. That's kind of the deal. But until then, this video marks the end of college Lydia. And with that, I say goodbye to this place that I love, to who I've been for the past 4 years, to everything that I've dealt with, to everything that I've built. That's all done, and I can move on.